Previously in X-Men. Welcome to the second issue of Previously in X-Men, where the goals are to number one, talk about the X-Men with other X-Men fans. Number two, update X-Men fans who grew up on them. And number three, to modernize the view of the X-Men to those who are still stuck on the 90's team. In this issue, I will be talking about Cyclops, in my opinion, one of the greatest X-Men and one of the greatest characters of all time. But in the opinion of many, a bland Boy Scout character. The goal of Previously in X-Men is to not just tell you and give you reviews about what happens in comics, but to also persuade you with the reasoning behind my opinion. With Cyclops, I'm going to go through his history and I'm going to point out my favorite moments from the comic, as well as from time to time compare it to his adaptations in movies and TV cartoons. I'm going to begin with Uncanny X-Men, issue 138, the issue where he quit the X-Men originally, had her first funeral. Yes, I said first. Now let's begin. There are a number of reasons why this issue is important. It's right after the Dark Phoenix saga where Jean dies, and it also goes through his entire history of the X-Men up until that point, right before he quits the team. The key points here is that he admits that he loves Jean, and when all the original X-Men left the team, Cyclops stayed behind because he has no purpose outside the X-Men. This will be a recurring theme for this character, his self-sacrifice for the dream. He is one of the most loyal X-Men to Xavier's dream, and he's been fighting and leading his team since he was a teenager. He had been team leader since the 1960s, and in the early 1980s, he finally decided to give it a quit. It's a moment that did not occur in the X-Men cartoon when it covered the Dark Phoenix saga, where he stays with the team after Jean's death. Fox is once again making another Phoenix movie, and it saddens me to know that they will never come close to the original, something that a children's cartoon did much better. There's a reason why the picture here and the words look familiar. It's because the children's cartoon did a faithful adaptation of the original story.
Scott, I've lost telepathic contact with the other X-Men. I think we're the only ones left. In here!
It's too shallow. They'll spot us.
Leave that to me. We're safe. For now.
Jean, we don't have much time. There's so much I feel.
A large part of the Phoenix saga has to do with their relationship. I can bet you that the movies, the new ones coming out, will not have enough time to develop this relationship the way the cartoon and the comics managed.
Ready?
And it's mistakes that I'm willing to bet the movie's going to make with the character Cyclops, as to why I understand why some people don't like the character. Cyclops, when done right, is one of the main focal points of the team. When done wrong, you probably just see Wolverine on the cover of everything. Which brings me to my first great Cyclops moment. Cyclops and Jean Grey against the Imperial Guard. With all the X-Men defeated, it's only Cyclops and Jean Grey left. And knowing that the Imperial Guard are coming for Jean, Cyclops still fights his hardest, knowing that this may be the last time he sees Jean, and knowing that there's no way he can defeat the Imperial Guard, he still fights on till his last breath. Now compare that to the garbage that is X-Men 3: The Last Stand, where Cyclops is removed in the beginning of the film, or to the nonsense that is Wolverine and the X-Men, where I don't know what they were doing there. Looking at some of these adaptations, I can understand why some people don't like the character, but when you go straight to the source, his leadership and his decisiveness shines brightly. Even when a Dark Phoenix returns, he still fights on, fights her, still believes he can save Jean. This guy never quits. Now I'm going to give you another example of the character of Cyclops as compared to the adaptation of the children's cartoon X-Men animated series, which is a great cartoon. There's one thing they missed in the battle against Proteus. This is adapted straight from the comics. This was a traumatizing experience for Wolverine.
Proteus attacks with the speed
Notice
of
how
thought.
Cyclops is not here.
Young man,
Even
has
though it
the
probably didn't
immature
make much of a
emotions
difference
of a
when you saw
child.
it as a kid, I'm going to show you later why it does.
What are you talking about? And by the way, when he was tossing us around, where were you hiding?
Back off, cornpone.
Your anger serves no purpose, Rogue. Wolverine could not prevent his hesitation.
What's that supposed to mean?
Only that there's no emotion harder to control than a paralyzing fear. We have all experienced it, but it must be even worse for you, who has never felt it before.
You saying I'm a coward, Blue Boy?
Beast had the correct observation, but Xavier just comes in and screams at both of them. Watch later when I show you how Cyclops handles the situation.
He never loses his cool.
Forget it, hon. In our business, we all get shook up every now and again.
I don't.
Damn, if only he had a great leader to guide him. Now look at here. Cyclops noticed problems with Wolverine immediately after Proteus attacked him. And to shake Wolverine out of his funk, he immediately starts a fight with Wolverine. The only other X-Men in on it is Jean Grey. As for Nightcrawler and Storm, they don't know why Cyclops is attacking Wolverine. During the fight, he keeps pushing Wolverine. Remember, this guy trains X-Men. He is their leader in the danger room and in the field. It's something you probably won't see in any of the movies or in any of the cartoons, how effective Cyclops is at combat, especially in any of those Fox movies. And at the end of Cyclops' test, here you can see Wolverine starts to respect Cyclops' leadership abilities. My next favorite Cyclops moment is one that's always mentioned in countdowns and fun facts. Storm did beat Cyclops without her powers. Yes, she did. Now let me give you the context and the background as to why Cyclops lost to Storm in a one-on-one duel for leadership of the X-Men. This story happens years after Cyclops left the X-Men, right after the Phoenix Saga that I showed you earlier. He met a woman named Madeline Pryor, got married to her, moved to Alaska, and had a kid. He comes back periodically to lead the X-Men, but there's some tension because he's been gone for a while and Storm has been a de facto leader while Cyclops has been away. Storm loses her powers accidentally by a weapon that Forge created, but she was still leading the X-Men without her powers. Cyclops feels that he should lead the team now that Storm does not have her powers anymore. Then there's the fact that Cyclops has a wife and a brand new baby, Nathan Christopher Summers. Madeline does not want him returning to the X-Men. They have an argument about it, but Cyclops feels the team needs him. Madeline asks Storm if she can lead, but Storm doesn't want to step on Cyclops' toes. After overhearing Madeline and Cyclops argue, Storm decides to challenge Cyclops, a duel in the danger room for leadership of the X-Men. Cyclops accepts. All of the X-Men and all of the New Mutants decide to sit back and watch this fight. But it's easily obvious to Wolverine that Cyclops' head is not in the game and he shouldn't be leader. During the fight, Cyclops is thinking about Madeline and his new baby son Nathan, and because of this, Storm takes advantage and manages to beat him. Storm is now leader of the X-Men. Cyclops leaves for good. Now this has long-term ramifications. We don't see Cyclops return as leader of the X-Men until the 90's team, the one that everybody remembers when he's wearing the blue suit, well, the one in the video I'm showing. Storm is leading the X-Men team throughout the rest of the 80's, at a time when the X-Men becomes its most popular, which of course sets up the big return of all of the X-Men in the early 90's, which also sets up the team that everybody remembers. We won't see Cyclops again until he's in a team called X Factor, but that's not the X-Men. That's the original X-Men, Iceman, Beast, Angel, and Jean Grey, who comes back to life after the Phoenix Saga. This is a big moment to me. Cyclops has always needed the X-Men. So what does he do without the X-Men? Well, he goes home and becomes a family man, at least for a while until he leaves his wife. And that's another big story. Even though he's gone, you gotta stop and think about how far he's gotten the team. He's been doing it since he's a teenager, since about 14 years old. By the time he leaves, the X-Men are now a great team. When Storm's team, the second team of X-Men, got there, they were terrible and lost fights. He got beat bad by Magneto in that first battle. Through his leadership, we had two great teams of X-Men, the original and Storm's second team, which Cyclops led until Storm was ready to take over the mantle as X-Men team leader. So yes, he did lose to Storm, but it's more of a passing of the torch. Cyclops, it's time for him to go and be a family man for a while. Alright, so at this point, we're almost done with the 80's Cyclops, and we're a few years away to the beginning of the 90's X-Men. As most of you already know, Jean Grey is alive in the 90's, and baby Nathan is all grown up into Cable. Cyclops is still married to Madeline and no longer an X-Men. So where does he go next? Well, he goes to the group called X Factor. The original team is reunited and Cyclops leaves his wife to go back. Eventually, he finds Jean again. Over in the X-Men, they're facing a new threat, the Marauders, a team created by Mr. Sinister. The two teams have a crossover in the Mutant Massacre, a storyline where Mr. Sinister orders the death of all of the Morlocks. But the X-Men and X-Factor don't really meet until the story of Inferno, also related to Mr. Sinister, Madeline Pryor, and Cyclops. Now, I won't get into Inferno here, because a lot of it has to do with Limbo and Colossus and magic, but Madeline Pryor does make a deal with a Limbo demon because Madeline feared that Cyclops left her for Jean Grey and X-Factor and left her baby. Mr. Sinister also tries to kill Madeline Pryor and take Cable as well. Well, baby Nathan. Now that Madeline Pryor is powered up by Limbo demons and is now called the Goblin Queen, the X-Men and X-Factor has to stop her. During the story, she also tries to sacrifice her baby, Nathan Christopher Summers, and when Cyclops finally saves his son, he finally admits that he was wrong for leaving Madeline. But here's where it becomes one of the biggest moments in Cyclops' life. Madeline finds out that she's just a clone of Jean Grey. She was created specifically for Cyclops to get him to have a baby with her. Once she was no longer needed, Mr. Sinister tried to get rid of her too, which is when she ran to the X-Men. This is the beginning of the first reveal that Mr. Sinister has been in Cyclops' life for a long time, manipulating him from the shadows. During the battle with Jean, Madeline dies, but now the X-Men all know who's behind the Mutant Massacre, who's behind Inferno, who's behind the Marauders. The reason for Cyclops having a baby who grows up to be Cable, it's all Mr. Sinister, and now the X-Men and X-Factor unite to take on Mr. Sinister. Now, X-Factor issue 39 has two big things. One is big moment in Cyclops' life, and also Cyclops does one of the most badass things I've ever seen him do in the comics. And once I show you, it'd be hard to deny how cool he is. Now, I don't know if this panel was ever directly adapted in the old cartoon, but I know it hasn't been in any movies or anything else. This story reveals how long Mr. Sinister has been manipulating both Alex and Scott Summers. Since before Cyclops was adopted by Professor Xavier, he's also the one that blocked his mutant powers and is the one that gave him the ruby quartz glasses that Cyclops wears to hold back the optic blast. I actually first learned about this when I was in high school in the 99 comics that told the origin of Cyclops, but I've never seen the original story, and so I went back and read all the back issues of X-Men and X-Factor as an adult. Mr. Sinister has a bunch of powers. I used to read a list back in old days when he had the cards. Too many to write down, but he did manage to beat both the X-Factor and X-Men teams. Here, Havoc powers up Cyclops, trying to get him to unleash his full fury against Mr. Sinister. One thing you see more in the comics than you do in movies, cartoons, is how hard Cyclops can hit with an optic blast at full strength. The video games do a much better job to showing us. As a kid, I thought this was amazing. Nobody else can hit Sinister like Cyclops can. Yeah, but that's just a children's cartoon on Saturday morning. Cyclops get hit much harder and cause much more destruction than that. And this is the ending of the Inferno storyline, the final conclusion of the Marauders and the Mutant Massacre back in the late 80s. The final destruction of Mr. Sinister, at least for a while. He gets obliterated by Cyclops' optic blast. It's the kind of final attack you would normally see in something like Dragon Ball Z. Most people wouldn't associate Cyclops' optic blast with that of something like the Kamehameha wave. That is a Cyclops powered up by Havoc to full strength. It's like a mega optic blast. Seeing Cyclops hit somebody with the full strength of his optic blast is something you rarely see. It's one of my favorite moments. That happened previously in X-Men, or X-Factor this time. Now my next and final story is an Apocalypse story, important for a number of reasons. Number one, fun fact, Apocalypse began as an X-Factor enemy, not an X-Men enemy. Apocalypse is the one who gives Mr. Sinister his immortality, which is revealed in a different story. Number two, Apocalypse is the one that gives his son, Nathan, the techno-organic virus, forcing him to go into the future, which eventually he becomes Cable. Number three, one of the most badass Cyclops moments that happens in the story. Number 4, this story wraps up the X Factor arc. After this, they go into a Shadow King arc where they meet Xavier and reunite with the X-Men, and from that team, they form the 90's X-Men team. So from this story on, the Summers family, Cyclops, and Cable are forever intertwined with Apocalypse. Now, let's jump to the end of the Apocalypse storyline in X Factor. Apocalypse abducts baby Nathan after realizing that he may become a powerful adversary in the future, realizing that he has the kind of energy that is strong enough to beat. Apparently, it's also a strong enough energy that awoke Apocalypse from his slumber. This is all part of Mr. Sinister's plan anyway, which is one of the reasons why Mr. Sinister favors Cyclops and Jean. Baby Nathan gets infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse. What this does is prevent natural cell duplication. Eventually, this will cover his whole body and kill baby Nathan. Ultimately, Cyclops is watching Apocalypse try to kill his son. And in the writing of the comic, it shows that this kind of opponent, Apocalypse, is the kind of opponent that the X-Men train for, but Cyclops lives to stop. Villains like Apocalypse that threaten humans and mutant lives. Here Cyclops thinks, if eyes are the windows to a human soul, then he's about to open his wide. It's moments like these where I really appreciate the character, his resolve, the grit, and determination. In situations where it really counts. Something that I will show in future Cyclops videos, but something I have not yet seen in any of the X-Men movies. But in this short video, I've already shown you what he's capable of in battles against Dark Phoenix, the Imperial Guard, Proteus, Mr. Sinister. Cyclops is one of the best characters, and he always comes through in a fight. There's a reason why he leads the X-Men. Now back to the story. Sister Ascani, a lady from the future who's part of a clan who challenges Apocalypse in the future, where he rules the world. So basically she gives Cyclops the option to save her son by sending him to the future with her, but he will never ever see his son ever again. At least for a short period of time. I think Cable had his first debut around this time. So Cyclops sends his son into the future where he can get help for the techno-organic virus. It's another great moment for the character that shows you the sacrifice he's willing to make. Not for the dream, but for him personally. The story ends with the Watcher now noticing Cyclops, the character. He knew who he was due to the events of the Dark Phoenix saga, but now he realizes that the decision he just made will have great ramifications in future storylines. This now begins the story between Cable and Apocalypse. It all began with Cyclops. And these were just the moments that I've picked that were from the 1980s. I plan on making future videos to finish out my Cyclops arc that covers the 90s and also goes into the 2000s. The Mutant Revolution and his eventual fall in the battle against the humans. As you can see, Cyclops is a great character who has numerous influence on different teams of X-Men, multiple characters of X-Men, and some of the villains. And hopefully by the time I'm done making all these Cyclops videos, just a couple more, you can have a greater appreciation for the character and have a better understanding why some of the X-Men comic book diehards get kind of mad when they see Cyclops portrayed incorrectly in movies or in other forms of media. Now, thank you for watching, and until next time, X fans, peace out.